are live. Okay. Welcome back to Senate GovOps on January 17th. We are going to get started again, and we have I'm going to make sure that your association correct. Association of Planning and Development Agencies with us today. And we'll just do some introductions. I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District. Get a picture of Allison coming in late. No. Late? She's got 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes of evidence. Go ahead, Olivia.
Olivia Parker, Committee Assistant. Senator Tanya Buchowski, Chittenden Central, and Vice Chair of GovOps.
Rebecca White, Windsor.
Bob Norris, Franklin 1.
Ann Watson, Washington.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
So thank you for being here with us. And we're just having introductions to a lot of agencies, organizations, et cetera, under our jurisdiction, just to hear what people do and who they are and what your legislative priorities may be or what you don't want us to do. Sometimes people are like, please don't do that. That would be great. I heard you have a slide presentation that Olivia's going to pull up.
Yeah, hopefully she can pull that up. Yeah, so exactly the agenda items are exactly the points we were hoping to cover.
Awesome.
For the record, my name is Charlie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission during the day, but then we also have a state association and part of the Government Relations Committee that does most of our interaction with the legislative committees.
And I'm Peter Gregory, Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission Director.
Yeah, and so thank you, Olivia. So we'll just that was our introduction. The second page, kind of a little bit about, our purpose as both an association and as a regional planning commissions is to strengthen the capability and capacity of our cities and towns. And we always kind of talk about in the absence of county government, RPCs kind of connect communities with federal and state funding and programs to solve local problems. So we kind of look at ourselves as that connective tissue between local and state government and the federal government oftentimes too. And we are political subdivisions of the state. We are governmental agencies. And so, we touch on a whole bunch of topics, and you see at the bottom there, transportation, land use, housing, brownfields, water quality, hazard mitigation, which includes management, economic development, and energy planning. And there's probably a few other things we've gotten engaged into that we'll touch on, but that's generally what the things that we work on. On the third slide, and just one quick point is just that, as you kind of mentioned, state policy, we do see a lot of parts of the government in motion. And so I use that term broadly, state, local, regional. And so we're always happy to participate in those conversations and trying to help further good policy that helps one or other, or hopefully all of those levels of government. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to thank the committee for its past work in changing statutes to allow the regional planning commissions to engage in shared services with groups of towns at their discretion. It was new to the state. I mean, many other parts of the country have councils of government that can provide the same services municipalities can, but it was this committee that was instrumental in Senator Clarkson in making sure that enabling statute was put into law. We're actually using it in our region.
I'm going to come back to that subject. Next slide, please. I think that just made a little note like that. We've served on things like the Climate Council last year, things like that. Quick facts, so there's 11 RPCs. The northern part of the state, kind of looks like the county boundaries. As you move further south, there's some, towns here and there on the different sides of the borders. But we have about 125 staff. Peter and I were kind of talking about what our budgets are like. We're probably $20, $30 million operation if you thought about us collectively as a kind of arm of the state, and really everything we're working on has some connection to state policy that we're advancing. And we can go to the next slide. Regional plans.
Yep. In addition to the technical assistance, that's really our bread and butter with communities, we are involved in regional planning. And that includes transportation planning with VTrans as our funder through Federal Highway. And then also certainly the regional plan itself, which is the regional variation of the municipal plans that towns work on. That regional plan helps set the guidance for our local planning. It must be consistent with state planning law, not may, like the local plans are. And that plan is used not only in education purposes, but in a couple of regulatory arenas. Act 250 obviously is one of those. And then the other is Section 248, energy and southern power site.
Senator Clarkson?
So Peter, towns adopt town plans. Who adopts our regional plan? I've actually never asked you this question because with county government not exactly being robust, who adopts the regional plan?
Each regional planning commission has a board of directors, and in most cases, they're made up of town representatives. Many of us have a few at-large memberships, focused on housing and so, but it's that
So you
board.
adopt your own plan.
We do adopt our own
So
plan.
there's no,
The municipalities.
right.
Yeah.
The 30, on average, does everybody represent roughly 30 towns?
We're probably average maybe 20, low 20s. So we have a couple regions that are like 10, MVDA is 55.
We're 30.
Yeah, we're 20.
You're only 20?
They got Burlington.
We're actually,
Yeah,
technically,
you
I'm
got
sorry, I missed what, we're 19. That includes Buell's Gore.
Don't forget Bill's Gore.
Well, you might be 20 now, because I imagine you represent both the town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction.
We always treated them separately, though, so.
Oh.
It was really a newsflash for us, yeah. So, yeah, is that helpful, Senator? Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
no,
you're seeing a lot of this presentation
I
again.
knew the commissioners adopted it. I just
Mhm.
realized, I was sort of thinking, but
Yeah, they're municipal reps and appointed by the select boards. In some cases, they're town managers, other cases are local planning commission members, but they set the policy for the region.
It's so interesting because we have regional planning commissions, we have CUDs, we have solid waste districts, we have water districts, we have all of these overlapping, not necessarily contiguous districts that do different but related things.
It is interesting.
although the RPCs, but
Oh,
RPCs,
Vermont.
Yeah.
but RPCs and RDCs have roughly the same overlapping districts, which is useful.
Yeah, same territory, but definitely complementary tasks,
Exactly.
not duplicative.
Yeah, the only difference to that is there's 2 regional development corporations in Northwest RPC's area. So there's a Grand Isle RDC and a Franklin County RDC.
Okay.
So there's 12 of them and 11 of us.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but everywhere else in the state, they roughly are same
Yeah,
districts.
the geographies are the same, yep. Next. Good.
So sure. So municipal planning and implementation, the regional planning commissions provided 187 different towns in the past year some guidance on helping them update their plans or their bylaws. And that includes, adding new required chapters to the municipal plans. Or it could include updating bylaws to make it more helpful to enable housing development. That's one of the issue areas we've been working on most extensively over the last year. Bylaw modernization grants.
And one little note I'll add here is that with the combination of state agencies, there's more focus on how to do equitable public engagement. Right, as we're working on plans for the communities and make sure we're addressing all of the issues, maybe those that aren't necessarily coming to the night meeting. So more effort on that to be continued on that discussion. Next slide. This talks a little bit about economic and community development.
Is that Kathleen James?
And
David
looks like
Durfee.
it. It looks like Cal.
Yeah, Dave. Sorry.
No, and so we do work in partnership with the regional development corporations. They're typically working more directly with employers. And we kind of look at ourselves as doing some of the foundational work, like working with towns on making sure there's zoning or infrastructure, water and sewer for the economic development to happen. I think in our world, we almost kind of call it community, that's our community development, and they do the economic development. But they do work hand in hand, but they are distinct though. You can go onto the next slide is kind of following up on economic development, of course, is brownfields. It's been a major program for RPCs, probably going back 20 years. And a lot of that has just been direct EPA funding coming to us for assessment. And also a couple of the RPCs have revolving loan funds and cleanup dollars also. Mount Scottney and Northwestern RPC have revolving loan funds that help with those cleanup projects. So last year, we did 55 communities were helped with assessment dollars.
And before we leave economic development, we do have some statutory responsibilities in the economic development planning end of things. As Charlie said, the RDCs work directly with businesses, but we do the kind of the foundational work that enables good economic development to happen. We also do work with the creative sector in our region. Our region did a study kind of estimating how much impact it has on our economy, and it's substantial, and that is something that we're trying to tout and support and market as best we can.
And that's our creative economy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Which we're very proud of. Again, a long time ago.
I mean, it not only brings in tax revenues to the state and supports people's lives, but it also enriches our lives.
Yes.
Brings people here to visit, but then hopefully to stay. So.
So the other place you and the RDCs intersect is with SEDS, right?
What is that?
So that's a comprehensive economic development strategy. It's a term for doing economic development planning that comes from the federal government. So those are under the auspices of the Economic Development Administration. And so, yeah, we have worked with our partners at the RDCs and our neighboring regions. I think we really have now 4 collaborations that have occurred. Some in Vermont, so Bennington and Wyndham have worked together on their SEDS, and hopefully will become an economic development district at some point, which can flow some more federal dollars into that region for economic development. You want to talk about yours?
Yes, we have an economic development district, which is a federal designation that focuses a lot of federal resources into a designated area. And we've had that, I think, 10 years now.
Yeah.
So that does enable more economic development administration funding for projects in our region, and certainly has other federal partners looking at it. But it's something that we worked hard to get, and it's related, in fact, to the Northern Border Regional Commission, which you've all heard of. And the RPCs were pretty active in working with Senator Leahy's staff to expand the boundary to include all of Vermont, not just the northern tier of the state, during one of the last Farm Bill reauthorizations. So
That's been accomplished, hasn't it?
that has been accomplished, and
Given the head of the Northern Borders lives in Reading,
Yeah.
we would hope it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 other economic development district areas. One is covering the northern 6 counties.
Right.
The Northern Vermont EDD, I think they're called. And then Chittenden County's been working with Central Vermont, RPC and RDC, GBIC in our region, Addison County, RPC and RDC, and Rutland, RPC and RDC to do a SEDS, a comprehensive economic development strategy for a kind of stretched region. You know, we don't naturally necessarily fit, easily with Rutland, but we do want to leave Rutland out, and so brought them into our work. And so we're just about done with our SEDS, and hopefully we'll be applying to the feds for an ED designation this year. So go to the next slide. Housing. You may have heard something about housing. It's something, I think that has been an issue that we've been working on for many years. It's clear that what we're doing now isn't accomplishing probably all the objectives that could be happening. But there is, work at the municipal planning and bylaw level. You can see, we did 187 of those last year. And, a lot of focus on how to increase density and the mix of uses in our villages. And, we're trying to enact the goals that are set out in statute. There's a lot of planning goals. The primary one that we focus on is really that smart growth goal. We talk about, having concentrating development in our centers separated by rural countryside. So that's kind of, I would say, kind of that foremost goal that we're kind of working on all the time. So a lot of the bylaws are focused on that. And that's all like about our modernization program last year, really trying to do the same work. And we work with our towns on this.
Just 1 second. Senator Biehoski.
Yeah, so you worked with 107 or 187 municipalities. Is that because you don't have the capacity to work with more, or only 187 asked for your help? Why was it not every municipality?
Yeah, I can't speak to exactly why every municipality wouldn't ask for help, but there certainly are some municipalities that are not in the planning and zoning game, or didn't want to be last year, right?
like a third of our towns in the Two Rivers region do not have zoning at all. So obviously, we weren't working on the zoning bylaw there.
Understood. I was trying to
No,
understand what the barriers were.
it's a
for
very good
town
question.
meeting.
You know, with town plans, they come up for renewal at during, years and stuff. So some years we're working on a bunch, some fewer.
Senator Watson?
Is one of the other reasons just the size or capacity of the town? I sort of imagine that bigger towns maybe don't interact as much, but maybe that's, I mean, that can't really be true in Chittenden County. They're all big relative.
Interact in just different ways and, even if they have paid staff, and there's certainly a lot of conversation going on right now about rural capacity. Even the large towns that have staff also have more issues on their plates. And so they're often turning to us when there's an issue, like they already have their hands full and there's one more issue they're trying to address, they may ask us to help them with it. And we're also, in our region, because we have extra transportation planning funds, we're able to kind of divert some of that into planning and bylaw work also. So if it supports walkable communities, so that's some of that transportation funds. You can go to the next slide. Touch real quickly on water quality. So we also touched A&R. We should probably be mentioning every agency that we're working with. So ACCD, right? You've got housing also under ACCD. And again, more, water quality. A&R and DEC here. We have been working a lot with towns on their municipal roads, general permit compliance in the Lake Champlain Basin and Metro Magog. We're getting engaged with the Clean Water Service Provider Program, which the legislature initiated in 2019, I think. So that's a fairly new program that's just getting underway with DEC, but quite a bit of work on water quality and more to come there. Go to the next slide. Geographic information services. So this is just maps with data, right? So all of us have GIS planners. All of us produce maps for our towns and our regions, but a lot of the maps, if you go into a town office, they're probably got printed out on a plotter in one of our offices, just because that's one of those kind of like that's not very sexy, but it's basic service that, or even a fire district, you may want, where are the fire hydrants, where are the roads, they want some maps in there, now hopefully on their tablets instead of paper, but so a lot of GIS support. You can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Question.
I don't know what the Venn diagram is allowed. I've never had two committees. So I have a question that actually came up in my previous committee that I'd like to ask here.
Sure, go ahead.
Cool. So the climate office is coming up with a resiliency and adaptation mapping program that would show the vulnerabilities in community, the social vulnerabilities overlapped with because I'm trying to quote her exactly, and the infrastructure vulnerabilities or like problems with culverts overlapping. Are these things being worked on together? Do you know about this, or are these two ideas separate from each other? Because that would not be good.
Our next two slides address that.
Ooh.
They have actually-
Oh my God.
These
two are
So
so on
just
top.
transportation planning.
Windsor, I mean.
So some of this, no surprise, this came out of Irene, right?
Right.
And VTrans really has done some really good work lately on the resiliency mapping. And so we've been, both part of that process and reviewing the data to make sure that's pretty good. I'm not as sure about all the social vulnerability pieces. And I don't know if there's more to talk about. Transportation planning is one of those core services we do with VTrans, but that's been going on for 30 years probably. If you go to the next slide.
I think that what you might be getting at is the environmental justice work that's happening. Yeah.
There's-
Are you involved in that?
There's
Yeah.
multiple things, and there's also
Yeah.
disaster resiliency,
Yeah.
emergency preparedness. They're all kind of connecting, and I think this is when we say that, like, we see a lot of different arms of the state government, and we're kind of weaving it together often in our regional work.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we work on hazard mitigation plans with towns, and then the climate action plans and energy planning, which is the next topic. All these things do come together and, try to make sure things stay consistent, nothing's working against each other. I'm not sure that we are always in the place of power to be able to make sure it doesn't. But, that's when we may be bringing issues back to say like, this isn't really working with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't happen too often, but every once in a while. And then even just basic emergency preparedness. Our staff, each one of us has 3 staff that are trained to work in the State Emergency Operations Center. So when the state staff gets overwhelmed, we're kind of their next layer of defense in terms of staffing the SEOC. And even if there's any disaster declaration, they ask us to make the calls to the towns, like how much damage did you have? And we do that initial inventory work so the state gets a sense of, can aggregate it and figure out how much damage there was. It's a federal disaster declaration, right? We're trying to figure out pretty quickly, like, did we get to that $1 million mark?
Yes, that's exactly. I was like, you're always like, I hope it kind of is a federal disaster, but I don't want a federal disaster.
Yeah, right.
I think we have like 10 federal disasters that are still open in the state,
Oh, gosh.
including Irene,
Someone said that earlier,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Which means there's still some federal dollars attached.
that
to
are
that.
being.
Yeah, we're
used.
still not finished with Irene.
And then once does
Public
that work involve mapping out where the damage has been done? Do you do that or does somebody else?
We've done it sometimes. I know we did a lot of that during Irene.
Yeah.
Probably because my office was we didn't have much damage in our region, so we were doing a lot of the back office work. We were helping, everybody was helping each other. Do what needs to get done, right? But I don't know about the local damage things. I don't know that we're doing mapping right away for that.
We do identify the pieces of infrastructure that are most vulnerable and typically integrate that into their local hazard mitigation plans. So then when we know when there are federal transportation dollars or state dollars available, we'll help the town focus in on a project, get some grant money to address it and then take care of it. So over time, we have identified the issues that are needing addressing, either because of past damage or we know they're undersized to begin with, and then kind of connect the dots.
Just a bit of a follow-up to this. So recognizing the infrastructure that's most vulnerable, I think is really important from a regional level. Are you also looking at and identifying the communities that are most vulnerable?
You mean in terms of like neighborhoods or demographic communities? I would say that there hasn't been a ton of work in that area. We've been trying to do more of that in Chittenden County. We obviously have, more larger diverse populations, but it's still challenging work. We just formed an equity advisory committee and are really trying to get at that more directly and having more diverse communities participate in planning processes. So I don't know, I feel like I should knock on wood, which isn't a good reaction, but I just hopeful that we make some good progress there. I think there's a lot of needs that aren't getting addressed.
And because of our work in flood hazard administration at the local level, they call us many times to help them administer their own bylaws. We know the vulnerable areas in town. We know the populations that are actually located in vulnerable areas. And to the extent that we're able to identify resources to mitigate those risks by either helping move mobile home parks or those kind of situations, we try. I think there's a lot more work the state needs to do in that regard because there just aren't the programs and the directed assistance to help when parks come on the market. Residents aren't prepared to take over ownership. Infrastructure is usually in tough shape. And in many cases, people should not be living in areas they're living. So that's kind of unfinished business that the state has to do. And we've been looking at other states' programs that really target the help in that area.
So,
Go ahead.
so it's a huge issue because I would say most mobile home parks are in pretty vulnerable areas. And certainly with Irene, we've found that, and it's certainly in the southern part of the state. That would be just a huge transitional financial lift to move. I mean, Tri Park is our biggest, example of that one in Brattleboro. I mean, to put any additional money, it just killed me to put additional money into our Riverside Park when we knew it was still as vulnerable as it is.
Yeah, I was involved in that decades ago, adding, new sewer infrastructure in that area. But then during Irene, we lost a number of homes in that part.
Yeah. And we put pads and we raised them up, but it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Next big thing, it's gonna just devastate people. So that's it's a big pin to put into that conversation.
And Olivia, you can scroll up to the next slide. Mentioned, we're right near the end here, energy planning. That we've done enhanced energy plans with 103 of the towns. So this was a voluntary effort that towns could engage with us on. All of the regional plans have worked with the Public Service Department to kind of reflect the comprehensive energy plan and even, I think to a large extent, the energy goals of the state. The 90% renewable by 2050 was the last theme. I think we're all about to undergo updating to these plans in the next year or so with some more guidance from Public Service Department. So that was energy, which again, there's a lot more to talk about there too, but.
And this may be changing at other levels, I don't know, but within that move towards 90% renewable, do you have statistics around what amount of that renewable is produced in state versus out of state?
The department probably has better statewide data.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, like, even at the threshold, there was, I think 50% was getting produced, or that was kind of a target laid out early on, but again.
First renewable energy standard.
Yeah, best to get it from the department directly.
That's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
And what, the other piece is, and what value is that? Because
we should do that too.
Yeah, we were kind of charged with trying to find sites to get to the 90% by 2050, and were there areas in each region after we take out natural resources that could work and work that through a local process. So the towns were engaged and more on board with where renewable projects could land.
Thanks.
Yeah, the next slide, we just, as you kind of gathered from the conversation, kind of our work is really the work of just partnerships. Our boards are made up of the municipalities. So right at the beginning, you got, anywhere from 10 to 50 partners at the table. But also with state agencies, we are creatures of the state government, but also the municipal governments. We've been working, you mentioned the CUDs, many of us were helpful. We just formed the most recent one is in Chittenden County. We just formed and the voters voted on it in November. So that's been something that we've been working on, our clean water service providers, where we're working with the conservation districts and watershed groups. So I think, like, as we said at the beginning, we just see a lot of the system of governance in Vermont. We try to work with in partnership and advance, projects and programs, both at the local and sometimes there are state programs that we're, bringing down to the municipality. And then the last slide, we're just planting some seeds of things that we're interested in, maybe talking with you further about if they come up. Open meeting law. The temporary measures that were put in place during COVID that allowed for fully virtual. We testified in House GovOps last week about the bill that they were looking at right now. Just to keep in mind that there are a lot of municipal or local government entities, including regional planning commissions, all those regional type governments you mentioned, but also all the committees of municipalities or even of the state. So there's, I don't know, thousands of committees that are affected by open meeting law beyond the select board and the school board. And so it would be really helpful if we could, some of those, if they wanted to, have the option of remaining fully virtual, particularly as we're trying to address climate change and encourage people not to drive as much, but also, frankly, there's just, safety issues, right? I have board members are like, it's February, can I dial in instead of driving in? So that's one issue. Just governmental relationships in general. And I think we brought up earlier, we did expand our ability to do shared services a little bit. if it comes up, we'd like to have some conversation about how to go a little bit further and actually have like maybe in other states it's called council of governments. I think in Vermont we could call it a council of towns, but to make it easier for towns to work together, we're still having challenges of if 3 towns want to work together on a ambulance service, or you name your service, animal control, whatever it is. It almost, if we can't figure out how to do it with our shared services model, which is a little complicated and clunky, we end up going to a place where they have to create a new municipality to do it. So I had 2 towns that wanted
Tennessee
to.
has so many municipalities.
Yeah, this council of governments model that is used in other states would allow us to just have like a subgroup of the elected town leaders say, oh, 3 of us want to work together on, policing, whatever it is, and they could just do it, share the cost and do it, and they have kind of a ready-made governance model. We keep kind of struggling with like how do select boards share control, and that we end up at the creating another union municipal district. So which is, sorry, no offense to anybody, kind of painful.
Yeah.
And,
Senator Watson has a question, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Well, this question started for me with like, oh, I wonder if you all are subject to open meeting law, and you are, okay. So that question to me was also related to like, what, were the regional planning commissions, are they in state statute? Like, so, okay, so, okay, which is why you all are basically, why you're subject to open meeting law. Okay, that was it. Well, just wondering about the origin story.
Yeah.
say 1968.
Okay.
State law. A few of us got created in 60. Wyndham was the first one in 65 or 6.
Cool. So we just have like 2 minutes left. So if you want to go to your other bullet points, and then I
Yeah,
can tell
just-
you about maybe next steps for some of these.
Rural capacity, obviously, one of our primary functions is just helping our towns with whatever they need. And so we're interested in that conversation. I think we're already online to have some conversations in the House.
Yeah, well, and
tomorrow.
hopefully here too, I think we all are looking at this $3 million and figuring out how to not reinvent the wheel, how to use the resources we have effectively. RPCs, RDCs, VCRD, and VLCT. How can we make all those resources work together in task forces that are deployed to towns that raise their hand?
We want to be a good partner in that.
Yeah, I just think we have a great opportunity for partnership here that without having to recreate something out of whole cloth.
And the final
And
point,
providing financial capacity for you to do it.
yeah, it always,
I know, Peter. I was like, I'm well trained.
it doesn't even need to say anything, thank you. And just the last point is really, really minor. It may seem like a minor administrative detail, but because we are a subdivision of the state, there's lots of times where the state establishes programs where there's kind of an unspoken intent of working with the RPCs to help the towns. Unless it's specific in statute,
Right.
and we're mostly like A&R, this has been really painful the last few years. Like every program, they know they want to work with us, but they end up having to go through kind of, and I hate to use the word, but it's a sham competitive procurement. And like, we're the only ones going to respond to the RFP, but we're going through that process. It would be nice if like the agencies, there was just some way for them to say, we know who we're going to contract with, even if it wasn't in state statute, that they could, I don't know if it's a commissioner or secretary decision, like, no, we know we're going to use another arm of government. This is not an issue if they're across agencies, but it's an issue when they want to work with us. So sorry, it's a really minor little detail, and but there's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, but it wastes resources. It lengthens the amount of time it takes to get things done. I would say we are working with Deputy Secretary Doug Farnham on the bulletins and potentially Title III changes, which talk about contracting.
Good.
Because we have inconsistent treatment by different state agencies within the state government on how we're treated in our work. And he recognizes that, we certainly recognize that, and I think he's got good intentions to change some of the bulletins to clarify the process agencies use and to make it clear that in these situations, you don't have to have a competitive, bidding process.
That would be so liberating.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where I almost don't want to respond to work that needs to be done out of principle. I mean, it
We don't
sounds,
want that happening.
no, it doesn't serve anyone well. So he's working with us.
Excellent. Well, these are good priorities for us to know about. The open meeting law, we are going to be taking up H42 tomorrow. It is meant to be temporary. And we are going to dig in more on the open meeting law, and we certainly will have you back to talk to us about that. The other three issues, I know that there's a lot of talk about rural capacity and various angles, so I'm sure we're going to have that. And we will probably do a miscellaneous bill that we could put in some of the other things that maybe come up about municipal government or state government, depending on what angle we take. So stay tuned and watch our agendas. If we don't reach out to you, please reach out to Olivia or me, and we'll have you guys back in to talk to us.
Yeah. And if you reach out anytime with any questions, happy to help.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming in.
Yeah.
It's really nice to meet you both, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
Absolutely. Likewise. Good to see you all. Nice to meet
Good
you.
to see you too. Take care. Thank you. All right, committee, we just have one more little thing to do that I just want to make sure we get to. I have to go to more. So
I thought chairs got shifted before.
I know I have another
okay.
meeting at 4. So especially for new senators, the Senate is charged with reviewing and approving all gubernatorial, most gubernatorial appointees. And that includes like big things like Supreme Court justices and secretaries and blah, 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 all the way down to like committees and commissions members. So every committee gets the people who are in their jurisdiction and we review them. So I was just gonna, for your benefit, I hopefully explain the process as I see it, and Senator Clarkson can jump in too. But we usually assign people, we try to give them to people who might overlap with your district, but if there's not somebody in your district, you might get somebody who's not in your district. You get their name and their address, and Olivia should be able to get you their contact information. Have you been told how to get that?
No.
Okay.
Scott will tell you.
Scott will tell you how to get it, but she should be able to get you their phone numbers and their email addresses. We keep that all confidential so their information doesn't get out there in the world. And then, yeah, and then it will tell you what they're being appointed to. And often these people have already been appointed and even served for a whole year or so, and we're just sort of cleaning up the mess, or not, hopefully not a mess, but cleaning up the, our duties. So what I would recommend is, first of all, look up what if you don't know the board or commission or whatever, make sure you understand what they've been appointed to. Last year, I learned about all sorts of things that I was like, oh, I had no idea this thing existed, but it's really good to know what they do before you call them. I also Googled them to see if you found anything about them that might be really cool and interesting, or not cool and problematic.
Or reportable to the Ethics Commission.
So just, see what you can find about them, but also the most important thing is to call them and to talk to them and do a little interview with them, at least 15-minute phone call. If you can meet, if they're in your district, you want to meet them in person for coffee on a Monday or something, that's always nice. I've done that a few times. But really, ask them questions about their work, who they are, how they do it, and make sure you feel comfortable with them. The big appointees like secretaries and commissioners, we will have in to interview as a committee, but these level appointees, we won't, unless you have concerns or things that you think the whole committee should hear about. Maybe they're good things that you want the whole committee to hear about, or maybe they're things you're a little uncomfortable with and you want other people to meet this person too. And then once you—
Sorry, can I just ask a
Yep.
question on that? Because we go into executive session generally, because do we have to vote as a committee on
Yeah.
the non-secretary, non-commissioners.
Yeah,
So we vote as a Senate on the commissioners and the secretaries, and whoever gets one of them has to actually make a short speech about why we should reappoint them or appoint them.
yeah, I was gonna get
But-
to that.
Actually, we do talk about them in executive session and vote on whether they should be appointed
Oh,
and
we
whether
vote-
that appointment should be confirmed.
Right, yeah, so I was
Lots of
gonna,
work.
yeah, I was getting
Sorry.
to that, yeah. So once you've interviewed them, you come back to the committee and you say, you know, I interviewed, this one I assigned to you. His name is Kyle Harris and he's been appointed to the Cannabis Control Board. So I think he lives in Roxbury, so I thought that might be in your district. So anyway, you would call him or meet him and talk to him, and then when you come back and say, you know, I've met him, I think, you know, and then you give a little report to us about him. And we recommend whether or not we think the full Senate should approve his.
Okay.
If they are, as Senator Clarkson said, a commissioner or secretary or a judge, you would give a full floor report on the person. And then there would be often a roll call vote of the Senate to approve the appointment. If it's just a committee or lower level commission, then we do those in a block. And I will every once in a while say to Secretary Bloomer, we want to take up all the underlined people on page 45 as a block. And any one of us as a senator can say, I would like to remove the name of Ann Watson from the list and vote on her separately. Or if there's a concern, or if they want a specific roll call vote because they want to show support or they want to show opposition or whatever. Rarely is there a problem with these, I'll just say. So don't be looking for problems because there aren't usually problems, but also just do your due diligence. So did I miss anything? And
Perfect.
often we get like backed up at the end of the session and there's this mad dash to do them all. So I would really love for you guys to do these in the next 2 weeks. And so we can bring them back. So Anne, this is yours. And if you have questions, you can talk to me about it separately. Tanya.
So, Madam Chair,
Yeah,
could I request that I not have anyone on the Cannabis Control Board?
you do not.
I just feel.
Yeah, and
I
you
think
can
that makes sense.
you can always request to not do somebody if you have whatever, or issue, a concern or conflict or whatever. But there are one Cannabis Control Board and 3 state police advisory board, I think. Just whenever you're done, we can always take them up at the end of committee like this, like a little quick thing. And come talk to me if you have questions about the process or concerns.
So you would want this back to you with confirmation by Tuesday, the 31st.
That would be excellent if we can do it by the end of the month, and we'll get more, they'll keep rolling in, and so we don't want to get them all backed up. And if you have a hard time getting a hold of them, then Olivia can sort of bug the administration and say, we need a better phone number, email